Go forward.
My Lords, this is a government to divide and rule, and although it hasn't had many successes over the past few months, I think it has been moderately successful in that. They attack the lefty lawyers and the judges who uphold the law, and they attack environmentalists with their common sense demands, ensuring a safe, secure future for planet and people. But above all, they attack the immigrants, the foreigners, because they hope it will win them votes. Well, I'm afraid it's not, and I would have thought, judging on the local election results last week, you would know that your policies are not popular anymore, and this bill is one of the worst. It's actually been in a constant stream of slurry of bad bills, and it really does need to go under, and I will be voting for the fatal motion. I understand where Labour's coming from with their idea about improving it, but if we push it back today, it cannot come back for 13 months. And I think that it's worth doing that because who knows, this government could be out of power by then, and Labour obviously wouldn't bring in anything like this. Now, there's 4 huge problems which I'll outline. First of all, it does break the law. And it's not just that this government is out to break the Geneva Convention and the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights, both of which Great Britain was founding signatory of. It isn't just that the government is trashing a British tradition of welcoming those fleeing war, terror and persecution. It's the ecstatic glee with which the Home Secretary watches the building of barracks in Rwanda and dreams of locking up those who've committed the crime of being desperate and vulnerable. And of course, Theresa May pointed out that we'd be encouraging crimes. She said, we're shutting the door on victims being trafficked into slavery here in the UK. The UNHCR has commented to say it's profoundly concerned by what the UK government is doing. It would be a clear breach of the Refugee Convention and would undermine a long-standing humanitarian tradition of which the British people are rightly proud. So it breaks laws, international and domestic, so much for the party of law and order. But let's put aside for a moment the humanitarian considerations in this bill, even though the bill is cruel, it's inhumane, just plain nasty, and will inflict pain and suffering on thousands of people. So let's be practical. It won't work. The whole bill is quite dubious in the way that it's going to be operated. Do you seriously think you're going to deport hundreds and thousands of people without protests and without opposition? It just won't happen. Now, the former head of the British Army, General Lord Sir Richard Dannatt, has attacked the government's plans to send migrants to Rwanda, for example, saying Rwanda is still living under the shadow of genocide. He was in Rwanda as Chief of the General Staff in 2009 and sits on the all-party parliamentary group on war crimes, which looks into those who participated in the Rwandan genocide. He argued it is unwise to send people from all over the world to a nation still recovering from the political violence that it was inflicted in the 1990s. Now, that sounds like a disorganised country to me, and it certainly doesn't sound safe. So perhaps the Labour Law Minister could explain his criteria for a safe country. And I would argue when you have opposition from someone who is a pillar of the establishment, you have a problem. I'm sure the government's done its sums on this, the detention, the accommodation, the flights, the payments to other countries, policing the protests. To me, it sounds extremely expensive, and I'd like to know what the cost is per person if all this works out. Now, the third thing is the bill is the opposite of what the UK needs, because these asylum seekers could be a drain on resources, but only if your country isn't short of 1 million workers, which we are. And these immigrants are only a burden if you don't let them work and pay taxes. And do they, in fact, cause longer queues for the NHS in hospitals and GP surgeries? No, in fact, these people seeking a new life are part of the solution to the NHS waiting line. Dr. Wahid Arian, an NHS medic and himself a child refugee and trauma victim survivor, says it's immigration that's keeping the NHS just about alive. The government has fooled some people into thinking that we are full up and too many resources would be used by asylum seekers. But the pressure on our NHS, our schools, our public services, our asylum system is coming from deliberate underfunding and careless privatisation by the Conservative government. We have an ageing population. We don't have enough young people coming through to pay our pensions or keep the economy functioning. We need immigration. And now, the fourth thing is breaking our democratic system. This government constantly tries to avoid parliamentary scrutiny for its measures, and with this bill and with others. It subverts democracy to make it easier to enact laws that would be deeply unpopular, and they give power to ministers when they should be really held to account by Parliament. We've had this argument several times, many times over the past few years, with more and more skeleton bills coming through that allow ministers incredible freedom to decide for us all. Now, the BMA has said a single, fair, humane and effective refugee system is needed in keeping with our obligations under international humanitarian and human rights law, including rights to necessary and appropriate health care, irrespective of an individual's route into the UK. And before the Minister asks if we Greens have an alternative, well, yes, of course we do. We have a fair and humane refugee and asylum policy. It's the result of a long period of research, and it is fully costed, unlike possibly the government scheme. You've got to remember, Greens are actually very good on financing the economy because we have so little money and we spend it extremely wisely. So, in short, this bill is not the solution to any problem. It's impractical, expensive, cruel, undemocratic, with criminal tendencies, and it won't work. I suggest the government has a rethink.
Lords, I should perhaps declare an interest